We are going to begin with breaking news and another sign of how dramatically and quickly a new wave of coronavirus infections is sweeping across the country. Tonight, the nation's largest school system, New York City, says it's closing all of its schools, sending more than 250,000 students who had been in classrooms back home for virtual learning tomorrow morning and creating chaos for working parents. That abrupt decision comes as the infection rate in New York City, once the epicenter of the pandemic, is rising once again. And while closing schools might be one of the largest indications of just how dire the crisis is becoming, it is far from the most devastating. As we come on the air, coronavirus has now killed more than 250,000 Americans. Tonight, a record-shattering 76,000 more Americans are hospitalized because of it. And 1 out of every 5 hospitals now says there just aren't enough doctors or nurses to keep fighting this daily onslaught of new cases. There is some big news on the vaccine front tonight, and it is good news. The drug maker Pfizer says new data shows its vaccine is actually 95% effective. That's even better than when it was first announced just last week. Pfizer now says it is days away from seeking emergency approval from the FDA to start giving the shot. So we have a lot of new reporting tonight that you and your family may need to know. CBS's Mola Lenghi is going to lead off our coverage from New York City. Good evening, Mola.
Well, good evening, Nora. As you mentioned, New York City Public Schools has canceled all in-person classes beginning tomorrow. That's after the city has reached a 3% positivity rate. Now, you remember, it was just 8 weeks ago that public schools here reopened. Today, students received a less than 24-hour notice about tomorrow's closing. As you can imagine, leaving working parents in an incredibly tough spot.
A painful about face for New York City.
We do need to close our schools for the coming days. No one is happy about this decision.
New York City was the first major city to reopen schools this fall, and the decision to close is not sitting well with the parents of the nearly 300,000 children affected.
School is closing tomorrow for an undetermined amount of time.
Why?
Muga Yafi has a first grader.
It's really disappointing for parents who are constantly scrambling. Every day it feels like we're waiting for the shoe to drop.
Adding to the confusion, bars, restaurants, and gyms will all remain open. It was a bitter pill to swallow on a day when one of the leading vaccines got a huge boost. Drug maker Pfizer says it will apply for FDA emergency approval within days after late-stage trials found its vaccine to be 95% effective with no serious side effects.
This vaccine looks extremely promising to help us end this pandemic.
Dr. Edward Walsh headed up one of Pfizer's phase 3 trials at the University of Rochester.
The benefit is enormous, and the risks are very small.
U.S. healthcare workers, the first in line for a vaccine once it's approved, could get their shots in about a month.
If we could hang on and implement the public health measures, that help is really on the way.
Other big news is the FDA approval of an at-home self-test that provides results in 30 minutes or less and costs less than $50. You do need a prescription, and it's not widely available until spring 2021. With a week to go before the Thanksgiving holiday, public officials are not taking any chances.
You don't want to be the turkey on Thanksgiving.
Americans are looking for the all clear, lining up by the thousands across the country to get tested.
I'm nervous about, if I get, sick, I don't want to get my family sick.
The CDC says the safest holiday this year is the one celebrated with your household. But if you are hosting, gatherings should be outdoors with a small group. Guests should bring their own food and wear masks. Around the country, governors are continuing to sound the alarm.
Arizona and our nation remain in a public health emergency, and getting back to normal isn't in the cards right now.
There are growing fears that hospitals in the hardest hit areas will be overwhelmed as doctors and nurses speak of nightmare situations now unfolding.
I think a lot of us now are in kind of, for lack of a better word, siege mentality. It is fatigue beyond fatigue.
And tonight, a comprehensive new study shows that most coronavirus patients maintain significant immunity for at least 8 months. That time frame is the only data they've had to work with. But it suggests that if you had the virus and you've recovered, you could be immune from reinfection for a considerable amount of time, longer than those 8 months. Now, Nora, this is still needing to be peer reviewed, but of course, promising news out of that study.
Very promising. Mola Lenghi, thank you.